Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Welcome to my review of the film. No spoilers in this review. I'm just going to give you my thoughts. And sometime this weekend, I'm going to go into the deeper spoilers. This review is just going to be for those people who want to know if they should go see the movie or not and what I thought of it. Some general thoughts. Okay? So let's get into it. First of all, the movie's directed by Andy Serkis. I believe this is his first directorial debut. Yes, that same Andy Serkis that we know of as, Gollum, Smeagol, the visual effects guy. Just a really big on behind the scenes production. Now he's directing films. This is his directorial debut. It stars Tom Hardy reprising his role from the first Venom movie as Eddie Brock. And now Woody Harrelson is playing Cletus Cassidy, who becomes Venom. Now, we saw him in the post-credit scene of the first Venom, so this was planned out even back then. Here we have his story come to fruition at last. Now, when it comes to the character of Carnage, Carnage was a big part of my childhood because when I was a kid is when Maximum Carnage came out. And Maximum Carnage was a huge storyline. This thing was everywhere. The comic storyline, there was the video games on Super NES and Sega Genesis, and we saw promos for them all the time. Like, Maximum Carnage was like a big deal, and that's really, Carnage was around before then, but that's really the storyline that I remember Carnage being in the 90s when I was getting into Spider-Man as a kid. Maximum Carnage was one of the big angles, and so I do like Carnage. Now, the movie's rated PG-13, so if you're expecting it to be like uber violent or whatever, you're not going to get that here. It's a lot of the violence, they cut away a lot. Some of the stuff is seen off screen. There is a lot of destruction and things like that, like cars flipping and people getting knocked away, but you don't actually see that much gore. So if you're expecting it to be a gory film, forget about it. And I want to talk about that for a minute. Expectations. So this is a difficult movie to review because I have mixed opinions on it. There's things that I really liked and things I did not like. First of all, this movie is not very comic book accurate. If you are looking for an adaptation of the Venom Carnage storylines from the comics, this movie only takes bits and pieces, very few bits and pieces from that. Cletus Cassidy, how Carnage is actually born from the Venom symbiote, things of that nature, but the movie goes in a totally different direction from what you would expect in the comics, and also the tone is the big thing. So, if you like the first Venom, you're going to like this movie. If you did not like the first Venom, you're probably not going to like it because this movie is like that movie, except turned with a dial turned all the way up. The movie tries really hard to be comedic. There's a lot of comedy in the film, even like during the parts that are supposed to be serious, which there are not very many in this movie. There's always some kind of comedy. Venom the symbiote is a very likable character, and his relationship with Eddie Brock is a big focal point of the film because at one point that friendship is strained and they're going to have to reunite and reconcile in order to take on Carnage. Now, like I said, the tone of the movie is what's going to make or break it for you because it's an entertaining movie. Look, this is a very entertaining movie. It's 90 minutes, right? It flew by, was very fast paced. I actually kind of would have been okay with a few more minutes being tacked on to the movie just to kind of flesh some things out because it did feel a bit rushed, especially in the middle of the movie. But at the same time, though, I don't want to be a hypocrite because I'm the guy who always says that not every movie has to be 2.5 hours. And I get tired of going to movie theaters for 2.5 hour movies that have a lot of fluff and a lot of filler. Whereas I prefer they shave some of that stuff off and just make a nice, solid 90-minute, 2-hour film. And this is that. However, there's still a bit more story that could have been fleshed out. And I do wonder, like I said in my video the other day, if we're going to get like an unrated version with more of the violence and the gore and maybe some more of Cletus Cassidy. Woody Harrelson, as expected, this should surprise nobody. Woody Harrelson is great as Cletus Cassidy. He is great. He has a very... His backstory is interesting because, again, expectations. Going into the film, I thought it would be a story about Cletus Cassidy versus Eddie Brock, and that is one aspect of the story. But that's not the whole story because in the second and third act, it kind of goes into this Bonnie and Clyde storyline with Cletus Cassidy that I was not expecting. Even though it was teased in the opening parts of the movie, it was not something I was expecting, and even though there are moments in the movie where people are getting killed and wiped away, it still played up for laughs. Like, you just cannot take this movie seriously. And that's the problem, while also being a good thing. If you enjoyed movies like Deadpool, you'll like this. The only difference is that the Venom and Carnage characters in the comics are not like Wade Wilson. They're not like Deadpool. And Venom, albeit he's got his wacky moments, we all can agree to that, is not really a prankster character the way he's portrayed here. You know, a lot of slapstick humor here, a lot of, again, lots of comedy. The movie has it start to finish. And if that's not your thing, dude, you're not going to like this movie. You're just not. I was expecting some comedy with Venom and Eddie Brock, and then, you know, Carnage being a bit more serious, like a serious threat. And it never really felt that way. When they fight near the end of the movie, or in the final act, it is a pretty cool fight, but it is also a lot like the one from the first movie. There are some differences, but like, it's still not being taken too seriously. There's still parts of it that are just really wacky and really, like, you know, really funny. You know, I mean, that's really it. So a lot like the first Venom movie, I like visually what they did with Venom. Like, he looks like he's supposed to look, pretty much. You know, whereas the Venom that we saw in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, I thought was too small and not really threatening. Plus, Topher Grace was just not a very good Eddie Brock. I think Tom Hardy has more of a presence than him. Who, by the way, like I mentioned earlier, Tom Hardy's great in the movie. But, you know, that Venom, though, albeit, you know, not as visually, I guess, accurate as this one, that one at least was more of the Venom that I grew up with. You know what I'm saying? This Venom is not that Venom. It just depends on what you're into and if you're willing to disconnect the comic book love. That's what it comes down to. 'Cause I will bet you there are going to be some comic fans that are going to trash this movie, dude. And I understand why. But the movie itself, I thought, was entertaining enough. I did not feel bored at all in the movie because it just brushes through very, very fast. But it is a shame because here's where I kind of become a nerd for a second. The first time that they did, like, you know, the Venom storyline, I think they botched it in Spider-Man 3. And I'm still hoping that someday we get a really good adaptation of the Black Costume saga where Spider-Man gets the black costume, then eventually Eddie Brock gets to become Venom, then later on we have Carnage. I still would like to have that as a storyline someday adapted to a theatrical film or to at least a TV show. And we haven't had that yet because I love classic 80s and early 90s Spider-Man comics. I have tons of them on my wall. I love Spider-Man from that era. So I would love to see that. But it's a shame because I really wanted Carnage to be taken a bit more seriously. And Woody Harrelson's great, but at no point in the movie, I mean, they show him destroying things, but at no point in the movie did I actually think he was going to go and, like, wipe out the whole city. Even though they told us he would. It's just not serious. There's a scene where, like, Cletus steals a car, and, like, it feels like a scene from a Looney Tunes cartoon, like the way he performed it. And again, he's a great actor, you know. Everybody did great in this movie, but I liked it. Here's the thing: this movie is entertaining. It entertained the hell out of me. It's just, I wonder, like, I know that it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I know that right now. This comment section might end up having a huge debate because I think some folks are going to love this movie and some are going to hate it. Me, I liked it, but I would have preferred a more serious Carnage for his first on-screen adaptation. That's just my opinion, and that's how I feel. So, oh yeah, and make sure you watch the mid-credit scene because I talked about it the other day. It's legit, and it's a big one. It got the biggest reaction in the movie theater, so that should tell you something. Some of the jokes just didn't hit in the movie theater, yo. Like, for me, I liked it. I didn't laugh out loud, but I liked the humor. I get the style of it. Some of the jokes did not hit. Some really did hit. But that scene, that mid-credit scene, got the crowd going nuts. So, anyway, spoiler review is coming very soon. Those are my thoughts on Venom without spoilers. Let me know what you thought down below, and I'll talk to y'all this weekend.